Ladies and gentlemen, if I may have your attention for a moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are about to start the service for Lita, Reid, I'd like to invite everyone to please take a moment and ensure that your cell phones are turned off or placed in a silent mode during the service. Officiating at the service this morning will be Rabbi D.D. Thomas.
We come together at this time and are charged with a very sacred mission. We get to do something for Lita that she cannot do for herself, and it's a blessing. We get to honor a remarkable woman, a woman who was on quite a journey in her life, who made the absolute most of her life at many different phases and stages of her life. And we get to give honor and merit and credit to her. So if you'll look at your booklets, they go right to left the way that we read Hebrew. We want to give a strong hello and to Samantha, who is on the live stream, who is watching us from Edinburgh, Scotland, who also put the video together. And I have some words that I'm going to share from her a little bit later. But we want to read on page 24 and 25 about the journey of life that we're all on as we celebrate the wonderful life that Lita had and the journey that we're celebrating here today. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, together allowed a going, a growing, from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity, and youth to age. Bottom of page 24. From innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing. From foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength and strength to weakness and often back again. From health to sickness and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love. From joy to gratitude. From pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage to life everlasting. And Lita was able to share the journey of her life with family. She is blessed to be survived by her children, Charles and his wife Darlene, Richard, Maralu and her husband Patrick, Deborah and her husband Terry, her grandchildren, Jason, Justin, Lita, Ricky, Bob, Zachary, Ruth, Rachel, Brian, Kelsey, and Samantha. Her great-grandchildren, Sarah and Emma, Olivia, Audrey, Ashlyn, Ian, and Lorelei. Her brother Charles, and many cousins around the country. She is predeceased by her husband Bob and her parents, Al and Helen. Her parents are buried here, as well as her grandparents, Ida and Max. So she will have some company here in the physical realm. But we have a prayer that we're going to do later on that actually helps her be reunited in the spiritual realm. So what we do here is actually extremely important. I'm going to share some words that we have from Samantha in Scotland. But first, I'm going to share some words from Deborah. These two things were posted on Facebook, but it's important to know that we have commandment number 5, honor your father and your mother. And Lita was fortunate to have children that took this very seriously and made sure that this commandment was honored in a way that Lita wanted. And sometimes this is difficult, especially when we're dealing with dementia and parents that age, sorting through the haze, but you are to be commended. It's a real blessing. And not everybody has children that care so much. It's unfortunate, but when we see this here, so it's a blessing. May you be blessed for taking care of your mom. Your family is very blessed, and you will be blessed as well. And you set an example for your children, too. So Deborah stated, early this morning we lost my mother, Lita Reid. She had been suffering from Parkinson's disease for several years and had recently gone through a rapid decline. The final phase was mercifully brief. My mother was a remarkable woman. And she goes on to state many of the accomplishments that she had, but we'll hear later on from many different people. But she did want to say, and I think it's important to say and share, I wish that we had more time together. I am very grateful for the support of my family and my friends and to the staff of Sunrise of Sacramento, Kaiser Permanente, and the Blossom Ridge Hospice. And thank you so much to all of you who are here today to support her at this time, and all of us as well. And Samantha, who is watching on the live stream, she posted this on Facebook. And as I said, she made the beautiful video that you got to watch. I have been going back and forth between posting on social media about this, but obviously decided to move forward. After having suffered from Parkinson's disease for years, my grandma, Lita Reid, Alaha Shalom, passed away yesterday morning. Being far from home made me feel helpless. It is hard wanting to help out, but not being able to do anything. My grandmother was very good about keeping track of our genealogy. Her Jewish great-grandparents immigrated from Latvia in 1891. I remember in elementary school calling my grandma to do a report on her. I asked her about being Jewish and growing up. Her family never really practiced Judaism. It seemed to me that my ancestors wanted to assimilate into American culture. Since I have felt rather helpless, I looked to the internet. I started Googling customs of Jewish culture when handling this situation. I have learned a lot about symbolic gestures that my ancestors would have practiced for generations. It has been an interesting and calming thing. Hug your loved ones extra tight for me tonight, since I cannot do the same. To my grandma, I would like to say thank you for passing on your love of music, especially Moonlight Sonata, and your determination. Tenuahi al mishka vech v'shalom. She loves her grandma, be'ahava. So now if you'll turn in your booklets towards the front, we have page 11 and 12, Psalm 121. We're going to do the English on the middle of page 12, and then we'll do the Hebrew on page 11. The music, the melodies of our prayers, I'm a rabbi and a cantor, so Lita got the right person. There's only a handful of us in the world that are both. So it is said that the melodies of our prayers, they help us cross over through the dimensions of the physical and the spiritual realm. And on the mystical side of Judaism, the Kabbalah, even if you don't know how to read Hebrew, if you gaze upon the letters themselves, that in and of itself is a meditation. So you can go within your own self and your own heart and your mind's eye and see Lita, or you can just sort of let the melodies sort of, make a connection between you, and we're in this beautiful space. This is the gorgeous chapel where we can connect to the world around us and also the world within us. And the prayers, the texts themselves of the Psalms attributed to King David. So let's read together the middle of page 12. I raise my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help will come from the eternal maker of heaven and earth. God will not allow your foot to slip. Your guardian will not slumber. Behold, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The eternal is your keeper. God is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will protect your being. The eternal will guard you coming and going from this time forth and forever. And the prayer is on page 11, the psalm. If you know it, feel free to sing along with me. Es Sinai El Harim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Es Sinai El Harim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Ezri Me'im Adonai Ohoseh Shamayim Va'aretz Ezri Me'im Adonai Ohoseh Shamayim Va'aretz. And so now if you will turn in your booklets to the next psalm, which is on page 14. We have Psalm 23. We'll read it in the English at the top together. You'll recognize it. It crosses over through many different denominations of faith. Adonai, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. And now we're going to hear from the speakers. We want to make sure that we have enough time for all of them. So first we're going to hear from Leonard, a cousin.
Good morning. Well, Lita and I were first cousins. We were both born in Detroit, she about 5.5 years before me. However, when I, as a 2-year-old, moved to California with my parents and my brother, Lita and her mom, my beloved Aunt Helen, stayed in Detroit. Eventually, they followed us to LA and lived with us until Al Martin came into Aunt Helen's life. Al and Helen married in 1940 and, with Lita, moved to a comfortable home in the fashionable Coronet Apartments on the Sunset Strip. Lita was legally adopted by Al, becoming Lita Martin. She spent her adolescence in that apartment and attended Hollywood High School. During this period, the Martins would rent a large cabin in Lake Arrowhead each summer. As part of the extended family, I was fortunate to be welcomed there. Lita met Bob Reid in Arrowhead. Bob was vacationing at his family's Arrowhead home. The Bob-Lita courtship began, and I tagged along in the role of the annoying kid cousin. My presence was so welcomed that I was eventually thrown overboard from Bob's sailboat and relegated to the rumble seat of Bob's green 1928 Model A Ford. After graduating from high school, Lita studied journalism at UCLA. Her college education was interrupted, however, when Lita and Bob eloped to Las Vegas. After their marriage, Bob and Lita lived in Olathe, Kansas, and subsequently in various California homes in Pacoima, Glendora, El Dorado Hills, and Ridgecrest. During this period, Chuck, Richard, Marilu, and Deborah arrived, rounding out the immediate Reid family. After Bob's passing, Lita settled in Visalia. Lita's personal journey reflected a broad range of interests. First, she was a fine musician and music lover. A talented pianist, she also took advantage as a teenager of a regular summer job ushering at the Hollywood Bowl to maximize her exposure to good music. Once settled in Ridgecrest, she took advantage of her journalism background to work as city editor of the Ridgecrest Daily Independent. Her interest in politics led her to activism in the Democratic, that's a big D Democratic Party, which included her candidacy in 2 unsuccessful political campaigns. Despite her electoral defeats, Lita's activism as a Democrat continued for many years, highlighted by her attendance at state party conventions and regional conferences. A crowning achievement was Lita's late life decision to study law, resulting in her admission to the California bar at the age of 68. While I didn't know a lot about Lita's subsequent law practice, I had the impression that she provided needed legal services for many who were financially distressed. It seemed to be a labor of love, payment for services being a minor consideration. In the midst of all this activity, Lita did not neglect her most important role as a loving mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. Over the last several years, Lita continued practicing law and the pursuit of an otherwise active life in spite of gradually increasing physical infirmities. She would drive, travel, and walk with growing difficulty. But she'd get where she wanted to go, whether it be her office, the courthouse, to a family wedding in Carmel, or birthday celebration in Chicago, a Democratic meeting in LA or San Francisco, or to a Disney shareholders event. Stubbornly, she took great pride in refusing to accept a handicapped placard for her car. Finally, reality required that she accept a totally dependent living arrangement at Sunrise of Sacramento. During this period, I visited her twice, fortunate enough to catch her on some very good days. On the first of those visits, almost 2 years ago, she was well enough to leave her facility to go out to lunch and spend some time at Deborah's home. While there, I sat down at Deborah's piano and played a Mozart sonata, imperfectly, but well enough for me to feel some pride. Lita seemed pleased, reminding me I had forgotten that she was my first piano teacher. Those visits in Sacramento capped my 77 years of fond memories of my cousin Lita, whose life was so well lived.
And now I'd like to call forward Beverly, a cousin, Lolly, Diane, and Maralu, a friend. And Beverly's going to come up here, and then Lolly, Diane, and Maralu are going to come over here and sit over and be ready to go. So Beverly, would you come up to the podium? And Lolly, Diane, and Maralu, will you go ahead and have a seat over there?
Cuz Lita. Lita and I were about 10 years old when she visited in Chicago, coming from Detroit with her grandma Ida. They were on their way to California, where Lita would live with her mom and later her new husband, Al Martin. We were both only children. We bonded. I first realized what it might be like to have a sister. For graduation from high school, my parents allowed me to spend the summer with our California family. First, I stayed with Leonard's parents, Lily and Joachim Chasman. Then with Lita, who lived in a high-rise on Sunset Boulevard next to Ciro's nightclub, overlooking Los Angeles. Lita ushered at the Hollywood Bowl and got me a job there as well. It was so glamorous for a Midwest teenager to be ushering in stars like Lana Turner and Alan Ladd and Tyrone Powell. I got to know my musical cousins, Lily, who played the piano, Joachim, who I think was first violinist with MGM, and Ed, who played the, I believe, clarinet. That summer, I learned to appreciate classical music, a gift that I have enjoyed throughout my life. Lita had a girlfriend, Ann Todd, who was being filmed in a movie. It was a teenager's delight to see her and a co-star, Scotty Beckett, at Universal Studios where we had lunch. Lita had a boyfriend, Bob, who drove us around in a car called Faithless. Before Bob left for the Army, that was World War II, they were married. The next time I saw Lita, I was in college. She arrived in Chicago with baby Chuck, 1 year old. How amazed I was that she had a baby and was traveling to see Bob at his Army camp. She opened my eyes to future motherhood. During her visit, we went downtown Chicago because she wanted to see Marshall Fields. However, she left her purse on the bus. As she lugged very heavy Chuck into Marshall Fields, the bus driver left his bus on State Street and ran into the store after the two teenagers carrying the baby and returned the purse. Each time I would go to California throughout the years, Lita would come to see me, whether it meant traveling hundreds of miles from Bakersfield to San Diego, Palm Springs, or Los Angeles, where we visited my husband's family. One year, Lita and Bob arrived in Chicago, which 2 or 4 of their children in a car that they drove from coast to coast. The only fly in the joyous event was when Mary Lou slammed her finger in the car door. After we were both widowed, I once went to Las Vegas with 2 girlfriends. I also had a $99 special for 2 nights at the Bellagio and called Lita to see if maybe she would meet me. Of course, she said, and we spent 2 days splashing and giggling in the Bellagio pool. I knew that Lita gave piano lessons, but I was surprised to learn that she was editor of her town newspaper. And then when I asked what she was doing next, she said she applied for the astronaut program, but was not accepted because she was almost 50 years old. Then I learned she was running for Democrat representative, and I asked if she won, could I meet her in Washington and could we go to the presidential ball? I was already planning what I'd wear. However, unfortunately, she did not. Then I heard she entered law school at 68. I should not have been surprised that she became an attorney in her 70s and pro bono work in her 80s. That was my cuz Liz. She was always, Lita was always had more computer knowledge on the internet than I did. And there were many years when our only contact was email and Facebook. She taught me how to email. She taught me through her many blogs to use Facebook. And at one time, she even came to Chicago and helped me make an oral interview on a DVD with my husband who had been in World War II about his experiences. Many years, our only contact was email and Facebook. But when she heard that I was having an 85th birthday party, she decided to come to Chicago. I did not realize that she was fighting Parkinson's until she arrived. I applaud her tenacity and her will to travel on her own from California with this handicap. But as you know, her philosophy was, if I don't use a cane or a walker, I won't feel like an invalid. But we insisted that she take a wheelchair in our huge Chicago airport. I had the driver tell her if she didn't get in that wheelchair, she was going to miss her plane. So she complied. So Lita, wherever you are, I will always remember my cuz, who was the sister I never had, till we meet again. Love, Bev.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Diane Chasman Rankin. My father was Edmund Chasman, the brother of Len Chasman, who you heard previously speak. And I was born in 1952, and for those of you who are younger, in the 50s growing up, there were very little resources for young girls. It wasn't until I was about 10 or 11 that a Little League baseball team was started in our community. And it wasn't until I was a senior at USC in 1974 that girls were allowed to be in the marching band. And 1976 was when we had the first woman journalist on TV. That was Barbara Walters. So growing up, we girls had very few role models. I looked to Mary Tyler Moore. She had a career and she was vibrant. But my real life role model was Lita, my Aunt Lita. And as you've heard, Lita, I pictured her as being plunked down in a community and starting a vibrant new career, something exciting and something meaningful. As you know, she became a journalist and then editor of the newspaper. She ran for office. She became a lawyer. And it was this can-do approach to Lita, and that she meshed it with being a mother that was so remarkable to me. And Deborah, thank you for, in her last days, for giving me the opportunity to thank Lita for being such a role model. And Lita, I know where you are. I know you in heaven. You are getting ready to do something amazing to help the community and souls around you. And I know if Lita had a car, she'd be with us today.
I'm Mara Lou Gray, an old friend. The first Mara Lou, then there was the second Mara Lou. But anyway, at the time that this was happening, I felt impelled to sit down and write some things that were in my heart, and it was difficult, but I put together a letter to send to Lita, and I don't know, it was toward the end. I don't know whether she heard it, but somehow I feel that she did. And I'm going to read you parts of the letter that I sent to her. And a few parts and pieces anyway. Lita dear, I have thought of you so often as the years went by. There was always a poignant element connected to these thoughts that I don't remember ever expressing to you, although I have done so to my friends and family throughout the years. If I don't tell you now, it'll go unsaid, and I will always be unhappy with myself. On the surface, it could seem rather trite, but it isn't, because it really did affect the way I continue to see things during my lifetime. It involves showing true friendship, how to treat, to honor, and show love to one's friends just by being there when it's important to them. When we were both in our beginning 20s, I was preparing for my upcoming wedding. My mother had recently passed away, so the planning was all on my rather lonely shoulders. A few showers were given for me, which of course is an integral part of creating those happy times. The first one was planned by one of my bridesmaids, Debbie, who Lita knew, to include the girls of the wedding party and others who were close to me. When I walked in, I was shocked to see you, just calmly sitting there. You had moved way up Northern California. There were no freeways, and that drive was long and tedious. I would never have expected you to make that drive, to make that long trip just to spend a couple of hours with me. At the same time, I came to realize that one of the bridesmaids, who only lived about 5 blocks away from me, was absent, having other things to do that obviously were more important to her, I suppose. I don't know why that struck me so very strongly, but you taught me a very valuable lesson that day, and I never forgot it. From that day forward, I always went out of my way to be present for my friends, especially during important times in their lives, whether the times were happy or sad. Now, while recently looking through photos, there you were once again at my wedding. You looking beautiful in your white floral dress with handsome Bob, under the canopy over my backgrounds, quietly in front, with champagne in hand, truly engaged as you watched the best man give the toast. Then watching Jim and I during our first dance, while others seemed to be partying in the background. You were, and still are, my role model, and that's the absolute truth. In addition, the incredible fact that your firstborn was named after me. Or you just liked the name, or whatever. I don't recall if I ever tried to express to you the honor that I felt. After all, you would have inadvertently thought of me from time to time as you called out that name. There is very little that has more value than being remembered by your own beloved friends as the years go by. Of course, in those years, young women moved alongside their husbands to wherever his job took them. Since you had chosen such an extremely handsome and super sweet guy, well, it wasn't any wonder that you did that happily. And so your presence was lost to me too soon. Just when we could have enjoyed each other as couples and possibly raised our families together, you were away, which made me sad. We always had so much fun together, running around town, having lunch, discussing our boyfriends with that rather droll, dry humor that you had, which of course made everything you said even funnier. I didn't like losing you to another city. As always, so many impediments to getting together. And calling long distance on the phone was so expensive at that time. Nevertheless, there is no replacing those first true friends that you loved and you trusted and that you knew were truly interested in your personal welfare. And so I missed you a lot. Wow. Not easy going back and feeling powerful old emotions. Anyway, girlfriend, please know that you have always been in my heart. Beautiful brain, beautiful pianist, beautiful soul. So, in the meantime, remember, I will always love you. Your eternal friend, Mara Lou. And so, it's difficult to stop without saying this. We all have friends, old and new, sometimes even outer family that pass through our lives. Many times, we overlook the ones who are calmer, maybe a bit in the background, who don't push themselves up front for attention. But when all is said and done, they are the ones who quietly but wholeheartedly are there for you. In my life, Lita was that person. I always knew that if I ever felt lost in any way, I could always count on her to be present for me. I had absolutely no doubt about that. Distance was the culprit, but I only wished that the Lord had given me the opportunity through the years to show how very much I appreciated her. But somehow, some way, we will find each other again.
Well, Leonard stole most of my thunder, being the other first cousin, because we played at the Coronet Apartments where Al and Helen lived, next to Ciro's. It was very flashy in my estimation, because I lived with them on and off from the age of from 6 to about 10 or 11. And we would play in the elevator, and as it went up and down between the floors, we'd stop it and crawl out the top of the elevator, not thinking, well, we thought about it moving, but it was far more exciting crawling through that crack onto the next floor. And we had to make sure Helen wasn't watching. And we went to Arrowhead, and Bob was there, and of course I wanted to traipse around behind them also. And Bob didn't throw me overboard from his boat, but he threatened to, so I would have to go in the forest and look for dead animals to bury. Lita, in the photographs I got that from her scrapbooks, I can see why I thought she was so glamorous, because to me she looked like Elizabeth Taylor and had a sarong bathing suit, a Dorothy L'Amour bathing suit. When she went to law school, I was younger, but not much, and it gave me the self-assuredness when I turned 70 to start writing a book, which everybody thought seemed kind of old to start writing a book. But I thought about Lita, and her way of life was thinking, if not now, when? So thank you, Lita.
So Leonard, Beverly, Lolly, Diane, and Marilu, everyone have their chance? Excellent. We are going to be hearing, before we do our El Malay Rachamim, which is our prayer that sends Lita off on the wings of angels to God, we're going to be hearing Beethoven's second movement, Pathetique, and this is one of the many pieces that Lita played, and I'd like you at that time to bring into your mind's eye happy times, whether it was an Arrowhead or climbing in between floors on elevators or taking joyous travel trips together or whatever that might be. But before we do that, if you'll turn to page 14, we have this text from Proverbs, Ashet Chayil, a woman of valor. And I was discussing this with the family. You know, this isn't something that we do all the time. I don't do it because It usually, I'll tell you, it doesn't always apply, but it really does apply in Lita's case, because if the entire world lived life like a woman of valor, male or female, the world would be a different place. And, Lita was able to find, love in her beloved husband, Bob, and she has such a legacy that she leaves with her children and her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren. So when you see the line that says her children and grandchildren, we're also going to add in great-grandchildren. Rise up and bless her. And when, in Judaism, when someone passes, when we acknowledge them, we say Kaddish at the interment site, but we say Kaddish in a Jewish service on Shabbat, and we rise and we say our loved ones' names for the first 11 months. So whether it's 30 days of mourning, the Shloshim period, or 11 months of mourning, we say their names. And then at the yard site, the anniversary of their death, we say their names. At festival times, Yizkor, at High Holy Days on Yom Kippur, Passover, which is coming up at the end of the month on the 30th, and when we have Shavuot, which is basically almost a month after that, and on Sukkot, when we have the festival services, we always remember them. And there's a text that we'll do at the internment site. When we remember them, when we say their names, we give that power to them, because without them, we wouldn't be here. And when we acknowledge that, when we say that out loud, we put that energy out into the universe, and we give credit to them, we give blessing to God, and then it reflects back upon us, and their legacy lives on forever. And that's what we do by being here, and that's what we carry that power and that energy and that love and that legacy forward. So when someone is an Eshet Chayil in a Jewish home, in a traditional Jewish home, a husband says this for his wife every Shabbat, every Friday evening. As the children grow older, they do it as well. And so when we do this at a time like this, it's one of the highest honors we can bestow upon her. So let us all read this together as an honor to Lita at this time. Bottom of page 14. Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. Together. A woman of valor who can find. She is more precious than fine pearls. Her husband trusts in her, and so he lacks nothing. She does him good, never harm, all the days of her life. She perceives that her labor is rewarding. Her candle burns on into the night. She reaches out to those in need and extends her hands to the poor. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she faces the future cheerfully. She speaks with wisdom. The law of kindness is on her lips. Her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren rise up and bless her. Her husband sings her praises. Many daughters have done valiantly, but you excel them all. And now if you'll turn to the next page, we have In Memory of a Mother, and we'll all read this out loud together. I remember you at this hour, my dear mother. I recall the days when you dwelled on earth, and your tender love watched over me like a guardian angel. You have gone from me, and I miss your concern, your wisdom, and your kind, proud eyes in which I moved through life. The bond that unites our souls can never be severed. Your image lives on within me, and the impress of your love and concern fills me with thoughts of tenderness and love. I am grateful for all my memories of you. May God lift up the divine light upon you and grant you peace. Amen. And so now we will listen to Beethoven as we think of our memories of Lita, and then we will rise for the El Malei Rachamim. Would you all please rise for the Emelei Rachamim only if you're able to? And if you will turn in your prayer booklets to page 18, I will be chanting the Hebrew at the bottom, and then at the end, we'll do the English at the top of page 19. In the Hebrew, you're going to hear me say Rachamim, and this means that we're asking God to have Rachmanis, to have compassion upon Lita's soul, to reunite her. You're going to hear me say Beseter, to give her her perfect seat in the heavenly realm alongside her loved ones who have already moved on. And then you're going to hear me say Shekhinah. May the divine feminine aspect of God, or the wings of an angel, lift her soul higher and higher and higher to that eternal resting place. And Beshalom, may she have peace for all eternity. And at the end, I'll raise my hand, I'll say Venomar, and that means let us all say. Everyone says Amen. Amen means I agree, may it be so. So if you agree that she should have all these things, you will say Amen. And then we'll read together on the top of page 19. In the blank, you'll say whatever you called her by. I will be saying Lita. In the Hebrew, I will be saying Lita bat Al and Helen, Lita daughter of Al and Helen. So please take a moment. You can see the wings of an angel lifting her soul higher and higher, or you can just visualize her at a vibrant, happy, healthy moment that you shared. Please take a moment. We ask that the divine be with Lita on this journey, that she be blessed with the presence of our souls here at this moment as we celebrate her life, her journey from this realm into the next, and may she be covered in the embrace of the Shekhinah, and may she be blessed with eternal peace. El Melei Rachamim Shochein Bam Ramim Hamsem Nachanachana Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah Im Kedoshim Kedoshim Tohorim Kezohar Harakia Mazahirin Et Nishmat Lita Batal V'Helen Shehalcha Le'olama Mal HaRachamim Mal HaRachamim Yasiraha Beseter Kanafav Le'olamim Ve'yitzror Bitzror HaChaim Et Nishmata Adonai Nachalata V'tanuach B'shalom Hamishkava V'nomar Amen. Together on the top of page 19. O compassionate God, eternal spirit of the universe, grant complete rest in your sheltering presence to Lita, who has entered eternity. Master of motherly love, sheltered by your divine wings, may she be bound up in the bond of eternal life. The eternal God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. Amen. Please be seated.
Thank you, Rabbi. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the chapel portion of the service. We will be proceeding to the interment site for the conclusion of service there. As we exit the take your prayer books with you because Rabbi will be referring to them for the concluding prayers. However, I would like to ask that you return them to us so that we may use them for another family. There will be a collection box available, or you may just leave them on the chairs and we will collect them. If you do wish to keep it, of course, you may do so. Immediately following conclusion of service at the interment site, the family has asked me to extend an invitation for you to join them at Factor's Famous Deli. They will be meeting on the garden patio, and I do have directions on the podium outside as you exit the chapel, and I will also have them available at the interment site. For those of you who are parked in the immediate vicinity of the chapel, we'd like to invite you to please return directly to your vehicle and follow behind the funeral coach. However, if you do wish to walk, as you exit the chapel, if you go down the steps to my right and then up the one-way street, you'll see some orange traffic cones, and that's where the funeral coach will be going. So if you do wish to walk, it's just down the steps to my right and up the one-way street. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask that you please rise as we exit the chapel.